Good Friday morning. You're listening to an encore best of presentation of America's First News, bringing you the best of our top newsmakers and interviews. Let's bring in our guest this morning. Dr. Joshua Cohen is a media psychologist. Dr. Cohen, thank you for joining us here on America's First News.
Thank you, Matt.
Most of us have heard of psychology. We are aware of certain benefits of psychology, but go into media psychology. What does that actually mean for those of us who are unaware, who can benefit from it, and why is storytelling such an important part of it?
Hey, good morning, sir. So what media psychology does is it's basically a form of doing critical thinking. So critical thinking is a way of looking at and communicating better with different kinds of media. So when you look at clinical psychology, they usually work with people in single numbers or in small groups. But media psychology covers all kinds of areas, including, you might look at the different networks. You might look at different kinds of now social media. And there are different kinds of forms of electronic media that have come out.
Sure.
So it's really a increasingly growing branch of psychology. So
You mentioned different outlets. I'm assuming we're talking about Fox, CNN, MSNBC, CNBC, and then social media as well. Any kind of media that really is digital and comes into our homes or our lives. But is it the psychology of the medium, or are you helping the individual on the other end? How does that work?
Well, there's a series of, a lot of different people will go out into the news now and start making social comments on different people that are, or different events that go on, but they go out into the area and they actually ask different people to, or help people that have been, suffering from different kinds of trauma. They do volunteer work. The people that I know are licensed psychologists as well sometimes that do that on the air. They're getting an increasingly amount of people that are demanding in the networks that they have that credential, although some people don't. So it really varies. A lot of people usually go to a school like I know one in Santa Barbara called Fielding University. They're basically training people to become media psychologists. They don't claim that they want to go into clinical psychology. That happens to be my background. Mm-hmm. But I'm license eligible. I'm not actually licensed yet.
I'm curious, we're speaking with Dr. Joshua Cohen on media psychology. You mentioned people will, jump on Facebook or Twitter or whatever form of media and comment on the media. Critical thinking, go into that when you're talking about the media, specifically when you're watching or listening to the media.
Yeah, I did an interview one time for someone at basically I was doing an interview with someone for a documentary from Premiere Magazine who basically said that, it really is important that we have these kinds of media studies. He was specifically talking about film studies, but that isn't a form of media psychology. And he said we might have a whole society of sheep that might, just sit there and look at the images and just take it. When you really learn to critically think, you start to process these images.
Has, everybody talks about the polarization of politics in the world. I would imagine that has a lot to do with it.
Absolutely.
If you're just going to sit there and take it.
Right. We're seeing that now a lot more. That people are starting to just kind of accept things that happen without really, just by jumping on their emotions and looking at the images or looking at what's being said and not going and fact-checking and looking for themselves. So it really could be, this is really happening now more than ever. There's still compared to the rest of the people that are, fact-checking on either side of the political spectrum, there's a little bit more going on also because of social media as well.
And this has really given rise to alternative media when you're talking about conservative and liberal outlets. I mean, it's given rise to a lot of alternative media. It really has. And I would go farther and say that a lot of that alternative media does not fact check a lot of what it puts out there.
Exactly. Even with the advent of or the uprising of virtual reality and some of the other new media, it's still just, it's not bridging that gap somehow. And what we're seeing is a polarization, like you said, that divides the country or divides the world in some ways, but it also brings it closer together. So it's like anything else, it's just a tool. It doesn't have an agenda. Media is another way of communication, and then, there's all kinds of possibilities that have been opening up lately, and I don't know if we're processing it or thinking about it any differently. It's just more information is available.
Interesting. So with the advent of the 24-hour news cycle and alternative media and everything we've been discussing, you think the thought process hasn't changed, but we're taking in more of it? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, it takes a while to, like, for instance, I've been clinically trained, so I spent 3,000 hours under supervision and in time with a client. We really need, it's interesting how people in a car or a vehicle might start yelling at someone because they're very far away. The same kind of thing happens in chat rooms or, in groups. Sometimes people lose the sight that there's a human being on the other side of it. So it's like the root or the anger level starts to go up, and compassion isn't always the most valuable thing these days. And learning to listen or to connect with another human being is what makes therapy work. And it also is what makes the world go round in a way, because without a connection, how are people going to really communicate these days or in any culture or civilization?
Well, we don't. We text message, as you mentioned. We fire off insults because the only thing we're looking at is our keyboard and thinking about who that other person might be. There's no, when you talk about this, there's no personal connection, Dr. Cohen.
Exactly. We're so interested in talking about what we're going to say next that we're not thinking, hey, what's that other person's point of view? And, there was a time when just there were 3 networks. People, when I grew up, and probably you too.
Nightly news.
people would say, this is what the Democrats say, or this is what the Republicans say. I just disagree. But, there was an etiquette to it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't this polarization of like the Manichean good versus bad.
Still a lot more to come on this Friday morning edition of America's First News. You're listening to an encore best of presentation, bringing you the best of our newsmakers and interviews.